All right, everybody. Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Method here with another lesson for you. Behind the scenes, you guys have no idea. This is like the fifth time I've spent 30 minutes recording this lesson, only to find out that it either dropped the audio completely or it's breaking up or doing something crazy. And so here we are again, trying to get this lesson pumped out because I think it's another really cool lesson. So hopefully this one works out. If it doesn't, you may never see this lesson. Um, that being said, so I also got to hurry because I can't get this lesson down under 20 minutes, which I'd really like to. And to do so, to get it even close, I have to skip over a tremendous amount of information that would, string everybody along. But I have all this information to get you to the point of this lesson buried on this channel. Everything about navigation, modes, the triad shapes, everything has already been explained. So I really do need to just be shorter on this one and skip over a lot of explanations and rabbit holes. So here we go. Um, so that being said, we're dealing with the major chords, the major triads today. There are three minor triads in the major scale that you should know about, and it would make a too long of a lesson, so we're just going over the three major. And these three major triads have three positions where you can play the same triad. So, for example, G makes this shape, the middle shape there, and this shape. Now, instead of calling it this shape, this is how we're going to want to think about them and identify them. Where the root is. Know that the brown is the root, the blue is the third, and the green is the fifth. There's a whole reason for these colors that I can't tell you about now, but it is in a couple of past lessons, the very important reasons I've chosen these colors. So, anyways, when I say on this one, I'm going to say, so the root note, which is the brown note that you see, root note on top. But you say, Mark, isn't that on the bottom of this diagram? Well, when we visualize, this is our mind's eye, but when we visualize it in real life, we are looking down from the top right there. So we're going to call that the top, and then that would mean this root is on the bottom, and this shape has the root in the middle. So this is something to remember. And if you put this shape over here, it actually makes more sense that you have a root on the bottom, root in the middle, root on the top on the other side with the middle in the middle. But we didn't do that today for this lesson. So that being said, to add these flavors to this chord, one of three flavors, which is how I think I worded the title, which is what I thought of a few minutes ago. It's actually what I mean is the three modal flavors to this triad. A major triad could be one of the three major modes or in the major scale. It could be based out of this triad, could be coming out of the Ionian. It could be a major one chord triad. But it could also be a four chord triad because the four is major, and another major, which is Mixolydian. This could be which is associated with the five of the scale. This could be the five chord. You say, where the heck does all that come from? It's all on lessons, how to get the modal order, which is easy and what you should know. And trust me when I say this stuff is so easy if you just plug it in and conceptualize it geometrically. So you need to know how to plug all that in. We got to move on from there. If you got lost there, then that's why. But I think you can still catch what's going on here. So that being said, that's the explanation there. Up here, we have the basics of our major scale, which is this shape right here. I cannot explain why this shape is the core of the fretboard, how important it is, how it's like a stone, a navigational stone that is not moving out of your fretboard if you are considering the major scale. The It's just the nature of the game. So you want to know this pattern here and how the modal intervals plug into how intervals. Someone said modes are intervals. Well, they correspond with intervals and they all plug into this pattern in a steady static way. When you move this around, the note names inside that you would put inside these squares will change. That's it. The interval patterns, this all stays the same. There's other lessons on that. So we're moving on. Ionian is here, Lydian is here, Mixolydian here is all we need to know for today's lesson. This shape, and this is our locator. Okay? Now, one thing that will trip you up, and that used to trip me up, is that there is this shape, which is this shape. The shape occurs in repeating places on your fretboard. As a matter of fact, 1, 2, 3, 4 places. Then it's in this broken box. It's like the 5th place. And we'll get to that in a second. So just helpful to know that. Why does it happen? Because it situates itself. That's when the square situates itself across the G and the B string. Other times it's only between B and E, and or D and A, and E and A that all have the same interval of a fourth separating, or fifth, depending on which direction. Music theory, we can't go there. But you guys get the gist. You have to deal with that. Moving on. So, when actually what makes that super easy is to plug it in like this. It's always going to plug into this scale shape, meaning it's going to plug into a pentatonic shape in gray right here, and it's going to plug into this master scale shape if you include these gray or beige notes here, or sand, or whatever color that is, and include it all together. That's anytime I see that, I conceptualize that that's where I am on my fretboard. It's that easy. So just consider, that, keep that in your mind, plug it in with that. Let's move on. So then when you see these square shapes in other parts of the fretboard, you're going to know where you are. This one plugs in here, but the way I remember it is because it gives you actually 2 shapes in one. It also plugs in here, and we call this the Dorian, and we call this the Phrygian shape, considering, because we're just putting giving it a name that what occurs off of its minor root. Now you've heard or should know that pentatonic has major, minor, and major, and so you can see the correspondence here. There's a pairing here of major and minor relationships. You've heard of natural major, or natural minor and major. So that is paired on one of the other pentatonic shapes. As a matter of fact, where we saw that red, the red shape there. Come on out. This is Aeolian, and that is Ionian. The 6 and the 1. This is the 3 and the 5. The darker of the 2 modes, darker minor, Phrygian, darker major, Mixolydian. And then we have the, there I got the A and the I. So here we have the Dorian and Lydian, the 2 and the 4 together as a pair. Just something that you should actually know, but theory that we shouldn't be tangenting on in this lesson. There's our square. It helps me navigate that way. We got to move on. There's my square there. It helps me navigate all those places. I can talk about it, but we got to move on and start plugging this into our 3 triad shapes and show you just how kind of easy and somewhat unusually interesting in geometry this is. If I was to play Ionian, I need my root note here. It's now brown to represent where I need the root of my chord to come from. It has to come out of that note. My 1 of my chord has to come out of that note, and it'll work. And it's major, one of the major modes, so it needs a major third. So we have our major triad shape here. On our brown note, that puts our gray here. So without even having this diagram on the board, I would know that it's here. All right, so before everything starts going crazy here, let's move on, because the guitar tends to start sending the computer into a crazy mode. So there's my square, and when I put my squares there, I know where the rest of the scale is, but we'll see that coming up here in a second. So if I was on this chord here, and I'm going to end a line on, if I want to really end it on the brown note, I'm going to end a thing. That's a green note up there, and then so you can see like how the blue and the green make great landing notes before you finally end on a root, perhaps. Especially if you're just like noodling within, there's no other chord coming up, because the upcoming chord might dictate where you're targeting next. So moving on from there, if we just add, gotta make an adjustment here, the rest of the squares there that so from there, once I plug in my one square, I know where the rest of my squares are, and that tells me about the rest of the scale, which I'll show you in a second. I see the my squares travel through here. I got that Aeolian shape that we talked about in my straight up and down chord with the middle root, my middle root chord. See, I knew I got to a square, and I knew in my square that was my root, because that's where the Ionian root lives. All right. All right, so all I did here is plug in the outside notes. It looks like, wow, you really plugged in a lot of notes there, but all you got to know, this is why this shape is so important. You're only missing 3 more notes of the scale, and here they are. There's, it looks like 4 notes, but that's a repeat note, so you're only adding these 3 notes. Here you go, and you get the complete major scale that you can play in. So made a little more sense to throw the root in there. All right. Moving on, we have we switch to Lydian. Now, an interesting thing to notice here is that we've actually really only toggled our square. Look at our square encapsulating the root there. Now look at here, we've only brought it down one section of squares, or one string. And on our guitar, that's up, higher, lighter, the more buoyant scale. So it's just like a simple way you could even know that where Lydian is without even having to think about this. Plug in at the L, plug in at the I, this is where the shape should be, blah, blah, blah. Just go up for Lydian. So now I have this, and I know where all my scales are, my shapes are. And I knew where my triad was, where I ended up. So cool. That's how people know, how to just get across in any old. Now this allows you to just kind of create in any direction, in any sonic direction that you want to go in. And notice right here on this shape too as well, the square moved from the middle of the shape. Oh, sorry, it's the broken shape for Ionian, but now we're here in Lydian. The shape goes regular, and we're up, using the green and brown note, as you see in the diagram. And the final thing is then hearing this, the fourth is the one note that's switched here. Like I said, these scales share 6 notes. Lydian shares 6 with Ionian. Mixolydian shares 6 with Ionian. So therefore, there's only one note different, and here it is. It's that tritone created from the roots, which gives us that raised fourth. And if you're like, oh yeah, every time someone talks about Lydian, I hear this like raised fourth, and I don't know what that famous teacher's talking about when he says it, but now you know, because to know it, you want to get you want sonic information, really, not just a fretboard diagram bit of information, but you want to be able to hear these things too. which is what this practicing will allow you to do. So now we expand it. We've got all our squares. We know what to do. Let's just move on into Mixolydian here. And we've got our square coming from the bottom there, just like we said. And notice that with Lydian here, it was up and off to the, I guess I would say the left side there, or the headstock side. And then with Mixolydian, it's down on the bottom, off to the body side, the pickup side, right? So, yeah. And then in the middle, you got that red Aeolian shape that we talked about earlier. But here we've got our square down there, so we know we're in our Phrygian Dorian shape. And cool. All right, I'll leave you with some modal kind of noodling here, where I'm going to try to target some of my chord tones while we drone the most basic way you could do a mode. So it's going to sound kind of basic. It's not going to sound as rich and creative as a complete, let's say, Lydian backing track or Mixolydian backing track or Ionian backing track. But it'll give you the basics today. So here we're going to do Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian. Here's turning that drone note into, first of all, I'm turning the drone note into major, and I'm turning the drone note into major Ionian. Will help if I ramp that diagram up. Roots. And I just went up knowing, like, all right, well, I've got my diagram set. I've got Dorian shape here, Phrygian shape here, Aeolian shape here, because it starts on the root. And so now, without switching that root note or that chord, major chord, but major Lydian. Let's do that. Didn't really get that tonality yet. Nor yet. But here it comes. Yeah. Made it way up here, but I just know from using what I need to do to plug in my square there. I'm going to show that on the diagram. Sorry about that, folks. Oh boy, get the Lydian. Get an expanded Lydian there. All right. See, when I went, that was a cool note because that was in the scale there. That would have been a, or that would not have been, but this would have. Root. 2, 7, root, but 7 loves to finish off or lead into the root, so that line works like that to gives it that sound. You can see, yeah. And then finally, Mixolydian here. I know it's Mixolydian. So now that didn't sound good to stop on, but it's in the scale, and the reason is the flatted 7. It's a gray note. It's a character note. All right, my audio is going crazy here, so I got to end the lesson, and I think that's all I wanted to show anyway. So everybody, thank you for watching, and have a great day.